Get a room.
It's a panel, folks. So the first question, I mean, you know, literally, seriously, people would say to me, like, you know so much about Star Trek, you should teach a course, and now, like, it's happening. But, like, why the Smithsonian? What made the Smithsonian and Star Trek just a perfect match? Margaret?
Well, Scott, when they brought the idea of the project to us, Learning for a Small World really wanted to be a new platform for lifetime learning. And that's a great fit for the Smithsonian Institution. We were founded with the idea that we are an institution for the increase and diffusion of knowledge. So we're researchers and we're educators, and the chance to then bring that to this new platform. You know, I was a college professor before I was a museum curator, and so I've designed courses before, but the chance to then put together something online where we could have people who had been in front of the camera, people who had been behind the scenes, people who had been academic workers who were thinking about these things, and bringing all of that together, I just thought it's a wonderful opportunity, and Star Trek is the perfect subject.
You know, when people hear a course, they're like, oh, God, homework? Really? Are you kidding me? No. Trust me, you're going to want to do this homework. And I really found just while we were working on this, you know, interviewing all of you, and like even I have to say, just the perspective of it, I learned more of it. It put it into better perspective. But you know, what's great about this in the way that it's interactive, that you interact with fans and you get into passionate but respectful debates about the topics.
Well, because being able to have these subjects really, it fits with some of the best of what we try to do with teaching history or teaching culture, to think about how do you build an argument using evidence. And there's nobody who's better at that than Star Trek fans, who know the nitty-gritty, the little details, the everything, and then love to talk about it and think about all of the broader things that it means. And being able to have folks who were part of creating those visions just makes it so much more powerful.
You know, I've known Mike and Denise Okuda for many years, but really over the last 2 years, we've become really close friends. And you know, when they had me be a part of the Roddenberry Vault, which raise your hand if you don't have the Roddenberry Vault. Get it! It's awesome. You're gonna love this thing. But you know, we are fans, and we've talked so much about the ways that Star Trek, going back to when you first got into Star Trek, when did it hit you that there was a lot more to this than just being an action and adventure series? Mike?
I think from the very beginning, you're sucked in by the action adventure, but from the very moment you realize this is written, but with some serious thought into it. It inspires you. From the very beginning, the character of Mr. Spock, he's not just this weird alien, but there's a depth to him, and not only is there a depth to him, but a depth that causes us to look at ourselves. And through all the incarnations of Star Trek, that's been a thread.
How about you, Denise?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think it inspired people to do things in their careers that took humankind forward. And I think that Star Trek tells us to be loving and kind and to seek knowledge. And I think we need that today more than we have in a long time in history. So I'm very proud to be part of something that is positive and hope that it influences people's thinking today, that we all need to be kind to each other.
For sure. Terry.
What are you going to ask me?
Terry, don't worry, it's all good. You know, when you are a part of something and it's your job and you're acting, but then something crosses over and you realize that you're a part of something that's pretty special. Was there like a moment, like early on at DS9, where you felt like it crossed over from being a job, a gig, you're an actor, and like, oh, actually, there's more to it than that?
Well, actually, I was a fan of the original series, so I was super excited to audition for this dark Star Trek show that was, you know, so in my mind it was that we were going to hit even cooler, deeper levels of unconsciousness and social things that are untouchable out loud, but we're going to deal with it, that sneaky way that Star Trek does with aliens. And so I think it was more, I was sort of just waiting for those moments to happen for me where it felt like I got to do something that was going to make a social impact. I mean, one of the first episodes, and I didn't say very much in the episode, was called Dax, and I got to be a hero for a woman who I was standing up for her integrity and to protect her honor, because it was something that, Curzon had an affair with her, but it was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't let that secret go. But to bigger things, obviously, like the interracial relationship between Dax and Worf, and we showed that clip. So things like that.
Well, Michael, going back to the earliest days of Next Gen, Worf didn't become the prominent character he was right away. It took a little bit, but then, especially by the third season, when Ron Moore came on, he started really developing the backstory with the Klingons. I felt like there was a lot more today with tolerance and acceptance of different cultures, and yet it's an action adventure show. I mean, did it hit you back then that that's what was going on here? Because I know you were also a fan of the original series.
Yeah, a quick thing, when the original series happened, we thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
That's what it was. We weren't really, and to what Michael was saying, you're sucked in by the coolness of it all. And you go, wow, this is really cool. Then all of a sudden you see the writing, which has always been a big thing for Star Trek. You see the writing, which you kind of go, oh, and you start, like you said, it holds up a mirror to your life, to your society. But what was the question again? I'm sorry. What was that?
When did it hit you that your job was more than just a job?
It was always a great job, and I always looked at it that way. I didn't really think too much about the rest of it, because I don't know, we were just kind of wrapped up in the work. But I think the last year of our show, when we would do the conventions, and we went from doing rooms that are about a tenth of this size to rooms like this that are jam-packed and stuff like that, then you kind of realize that this is kind of taking off, and that it's being more than just what we thought it was from the very beginning. But in terms of what it meant to people, or this was going to be groundbreaking or anything like that, I never really thought of it that way. I just thought it was a great show. It was really well written, and Gene got us off to a great start, and Rick and the guys and the writers kind of took it from there and created this whole universe. But I always thought it was great television. I never really, only until you go to the convention and people come up to you and say, oh, by the way, I've become this because of the character, or I've become this because of the show, or, this one guy in Vegas, in fact, he cleaned up his act. He was all dressed in a Klingon thing, and he said, oh, I had lost everything, and didn't have anything, and your character did this. And I go, well, you did it. And he said, no, you did it. And we were going back and forth. No, you did it. But if it helps in any way, that's fantastic. If it moves somebody in a positive, loving direction, then I'm all for it.
Well, on that note, Michael, I know you have to run to another...
I still have 10 minutes.
Okay, good. Stay here. Adam Nimoy.
Scott.
Raise your hand. No, forget the raise your hand. My round of applause. Give it up for the love of Spock.
Thank you.
Wow. You've talked about this in the film. You've talked about this while promoting the film, while making the rounds. But now with this perspective of this online course, you were watching the show as it was on week to week. Channel, it was NBC, 7:30 p.m. starting September 8th.
8 o'clock, Thursday night.
Yep, Thursday night, right? 66. So, what did it hit you? Oh, you're a fan. I know.
September 8th.
September 8th. Yep, Thursday night, right? 8 o'clock, Thursday night. 8 o'clock, Thursday night. Yep, Thursday night, right? So, when did you start to become aware of its societal, its cultural impact? You know, I mean, you're a kid, you know, but like.
Well, I didn't until I was in college, actually. I think I may have shared this experience with some of you before, but I didn't have a TV in college. I wasn't paying any attention, and the syndicated market was burgeoning at that time. I was at Berkeley. I went to a co-op to study with a friend of mine, and I went to make a phone call. When I came back, he was gone, and the entire floor was empty. It was eerily quiet in this building. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I thought they had like a fire drill or something, you know? So I packed up my books and then started to leave the building, and just as I went out the front door, I noticed the flicker of that TV, you know, that light from the TV flickering in their TV room, and I opened the door, and they were all crammed in there watching Star Trek. And my friend was in there smiling, and they were like, either come in or get the hell out. Because they didn't want to be disturbed. So it was then that I really began to see that this show was having an impact. And then also, interestingly enough, in Berkeley was the Federation Trading Post had this store exclusively dedicated to Star Trek merchandise on Telegraph Avenue in Berkeley. So one of my roommates took me to see that. And that's when it started to really permeate to me that I became much more aware it was back on my radar. And then I started watching with friends. I started watching the syndicated shows every night at 5 o'clock. We'd break from study before dinner, and we'd watch an hour of Star Trek. And
So it was 5 o'clock for you?
it was 5 o'clock in Berkeley in the syndicated market 5 days a week.
Right.
And then sometimes they would have, you know, the all-day marathons on the weekends.
Well, I was, in Philadelphia, it was 7 o'clock at night on WPHL, Channel 17, Philadelphia.
Well, you know,
That's what the guy said. You would go Philadelphia.
speaking about
It's
college,
still in my head. Darn it! But hey, he did his job. I remember it. You know,
talking about, I just want to inject, talking about college, is that's when the whole syndicated thing was happening. The same thing. I was in college in San Francisco, and we would have drinking games. It was on 4 times a day, actually, at some point in San Francisco. We have drinking games. Who could figure out the episode the quickest? And whoever won that would get a shot of tequila. And it was like, okay, the black and white guy, okay, oh, you know, and it got to the point where we saw it so much that it was literally 10 seconds. Maybe less.
God, it's 2 seconds when you got Scott in the room.
wrong, Michael? By the way, that was last year.
Hey, we were drunk.
You know, one of the things that, you know, doing this course, I went to the National Air and Space Museum once when I was a senior in college. That was 1990. Do the math. And so when this course like took off and I got to be a part of it, I'm so excited to go back because forget about the lunar module, forget about the glamorous Glennis, you know, forget about, you know, Friendship 7. I wanted to see the Enterprise. The Enterprise. This is not an Enterprise. And Mike and Denise, you helped bring this baby back to life. And this is the Holy Grail. And that was just like, for starters, like Marvin, you and I saw some pretty cool stuff. What did we actually get to do on those days that we were filming?
It was a lot of fun because the National Air and Space Museum has had an interest in science fiction and how spaceflight has been imagined since before there was the dedicated building on the National Mall that opened in 1976. So the Enterprise model actually came into the collection in 1974. But being able to have, we have a small collection of tribbles. We have one of the Klingon ships, one of the very, very early distance models of those. And so we were even able to go over the National Museum of African American History and Culture, just acquired one of Nichelle Nichols' season 1 costumes from her playing the character of Lieutenant Uhura. And so we were really excited to get to go with the chief conservator for the National Museum of African American History and Culture and get to go see that. It's not on display yet. And so if you participate in the course, you get to do those behind the scenes trips with us, as well as hear these conversations from these really thoughtful people.
I mean, like we saw the model of the Klingon, you know, the Enterprise. That's like that they built in '64 to make the cage. And the lights are working in the Air and Space Museum, and then like to see like the model that they used to film like episodes like the Enterprise incident, even though that was a Romulan ship, but also A Lad of Troyes and Day of the Dove and Nichelle Nichols' dress that she actually wore. This is not, a prop. It's, that you get in the dealer's room from Anovos. This is like the costume she wore, the uniform from the first season of Star Trek. I mean, this is like...
It's so tiny, it's so short.
It's so tiny.
So short.
Yes. She was tiny, yeah. No, I mean... I think,
And the triples, everybody loves the triples.
yeah, it was so like to be a part of that too. But the course explores a lot of questions like, what does it mean to be like, what is the final frontier? What is the frontier? I just remember being a little kid hearing those words, hearing Shatner with that echo, the final frontier. It just grabbed you, didn't it? And then you hear, dun, 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 dun. It still sounds great. Yeah, okay, Michael has to go. Let's hear it from Michael Dorn, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Okay, now Mike and Denise can slide down. Yeah, we're all going to get a little cozier. But this is also it asks questions like what is alien? The term alien it's a loaded term. And before we get into the discussion, let's take a look at the clip, and hopefully this works this time. And yes, here we go.
The gentleman who we saw speaking with the glasses and the purple shirt is Professor Henry Jenkins, who is a really esteemed media studies scholar. He's at USC, University of Southern California. I've been reading his work since graduate school. He's really one of the pioneering scholars looking at television, fandom studies, in the areas of popular studies scholarship. So being able to have him come and just talk about the kinds of structures that he's been able to be one of the pioneering people putting on the study of popular culture and media, and then having that in literal conversation with the folks who played the roles, and who are self-conscious of the social implications of what they're doing. I love Far Beyond the Stars. Avery Brooks directed that episode. He was self-consciously thinking, yes, thank you, about that conversation about race. And what it meant to portray a captain on Deep Space Nine. So I love the opportunity to have real scholars who are working on the stuff, and then to put those questions about, what is alien? Scholars talk about extrapolation, defamiliarization. I love the chance to introduce that to the Star Trek fandom and to have some of those words coming out of your mouth.
You couldn't shut me up, actually. But, because especially as over the last 52 years since Star Trek first debuted, from the beginning, alien and alienation was a key topic and a backstory. And, to this day, with the new show, Discovery, it is also a key topic. And like Mike and Denise, what are the ways in which you've seen the topic of alien and immigration become more relevant in the Star Trek universe?
The nature of being alien certainly has been a through line through the entire series, but especially on Deep Space Nine, where we're seeing the integration of these, not merely the Bajorans and the Federation, but the Bajorans and the Cardassians, who are enemies. Finding them struggle to find some common ground between them was powerful then, and certainly more powerful now.
Denise, what do you think?
Infinite diversity in infinite combinations. We are all more alike than we are different, and our differences make us stronger. And I think we all need to remember that, especially today.
Yes, thank you. Adam, your father set the stage for that in more ways than one?
My father was fond of saying that his parents, who were Russian-born, were aliens who came to the States to become citizens. He was a citizen born in Boston who came to Hollywood to become an alien. He always loved that. The thing is, the import is, what we're all talking about is a metaphor for our society, that Gene Roddenberry really created Star Trek to hide some of these issues that were plaguing our society, because he tried to take these things head on, some of these social issues, in another TV series called The Lieutenant, and he got in a big trouble for it, and they canceled the show. So he was really, he was kind of pulling one over on the network by trying to create a science fiction show, and yet still that embodied these poignant issues that we're still dealing with today. And what my father was fond of saying was that it's so interesting that he was the only alien on the original crew of the Starship. And that as such, it was reflecting his own life of being an alien in a very tight culture in the West End of Boston with a bunch of immigrants, where he was trying to, he was trying to find a way to get himself into the mainstream of a life in America. And that's what Spock's objective is to give what he had to offer, even though he's a different species, for the betterment of this community that he was in on the Starship Enterprise. And what's so interesting to me is that has really kind of like resounded, and there's been such a ripple effect from that, because you look at Deep Space Nine, there's many species, many aliens involved who are running that space station. You look at Discovery now, there's 3 or 4 alien species who are on that ship. So it's something that's really, I think, one of the major issues that's taken hold of the fan base, and we yearn for more. We want to see some kind of cooperation between aliens from a different race, from different perspectives, coming together for the common good. It's also interesting, I was doing some research on this, guys. It's interesting to note that on the space station right now, there's 2 or 3 cosmonauts up there with the American crew. No collusion, but they're up there with the American, it's like, the final frontier is where we're going to break down these boundaries and work together as the human species towards a common goal and for the good. Thank you.
See, that goes into something that it's a topic that we can all really be a part of and discuss. Definitely through the course, but even here is what role can and does Star Trek take in making the world a better place? Loaded question. Lots of answers. One that's definitely worthy of discussion. Again, definitely in the day and age that we're in now. But what role does Star Trek in all its forms take in helping make the world a better place? Margaret, let's start with you.
Well, as a history professor and when I was teaching women's studies, one of the things that I really was working on with my students was, our evidence-based argument, right? How do you become a critical thinker? How do you become a critical reader? And then how do you become an informed citizen who can really have those conversations? And Star Trek was often just a great way to work into those conversations. So when I was a graduate student at Cornell, I had created a course, Gender, Race, Society, and Space. Star Trek, science fiction, we read Jules Verne, we were looking at real space history and all of the combinations of those things. And then I went and got a real academic job, and I was kind of pitching, I can teach these really highfalutin things, I can do all of your theory classes and methodology. And they said, we saw on your resume that you teach a science fiction class. Could you do that here? And I thought, yeah, because that's what people want, to be able to take the things that they're watching for fun and that they are reading and that they're thinking about, and then ask them these really big questions and then get to have that conversation about it. And so Star Trek has often been just a great way to start those conversations. And I think, being able to have the Enterprise model in conversation with the rest of those real space artifacts begins that conversation, I hope, for our visitors at the museum. And the course is an extension of that. It's a way that anybody sitting in their living room, at their bedroom, at their laptop, can be a part of that conversation. And the conversation is really going to be the fun part of the course.
Well, one of the best parts of doing, when we were doing our thing, was we interviewed, obviously saw in the trailer for it, Walter Koenig came in and did a great interview with us. And I had asked him about an episode that, growing up, I thought it was fine. It wasn't one of my favorites, but it wasn't one that I didn't care for either. But over the years, I grew to appreciate it because of what it stood for and the conversation it started. And this is A Private Little War. I mean, this came out in 1968, after the Tet Offensive, and it is a direct statement on the Vietnam conflict. And the end result of that episode was a controversial one because of the way that Kirk decided to move ahead with arming the hill people with flintlocks. The balance of power. Sorry. But that's the sort of conversation, one of many that Star Trek can help take part in to help make the world a better place. And it's also one that opens up the door for diversity, for gender equality, and for sexual identity. And Terry, I know that one episode in particular for you was one that resonated long after it first aired. So what was that moment for you? When did you start to see the impact of that made you realize how powerful that moment was?
Well, right away, the producers asked me if I would be okay with having an episode be about a same-sex relationship, that a wife that I widowed would come on and that there would be a kiss, and would I be okay with that? And I started modeling in New York City when I was 17. It was really my first introduction to people in the large array of the sexual diversity of people. And but this just felt like a really awesome opportunity to, the way it was written, it was about the relationship and about love, not about, it wasn't about sex, it was about honor, and it felt like it didn't hit it on the head. The fact that they were in love with each other was the most important part of the story. I'm sorry, I kind of, I don't know where to start with that. But when I knew it was important, I knew it was important when we were doing it. When it aired and in New York, and then the affiliates across the country started not airing it because they realized what it was about, that was shocking to me. That it was, I mean, they'd already had, in that time frame of when we filmed this, Ellen had kissed a girl, and I can't think of her name.
Laura Dern?
No, she looks like me, only she's way more famous.
No, I can't.
People, you tell me I look like her. Oh, God. The jeans, Calvin Klein's, nothing comes between me and her. Thank you, Brooke Shields. She kissed a girl on her show.
You look like Brooke Shields.
And so it was shocking to me, though, that those shows got watched, but ours, it dealt with it much more seriously, and it was really great. But years later now, I mean, I left and I had Max, and I left my career, but when I came back, it was astonishing to me how many people come up to me now and say, thank you, I was able to accept my sexuality because of that episode. I feel normal and okay and accepted, and that is just, I'm so proud to have been able to represent a group of people that don't feel comfortable.
Sure, absolutely.
And feel alienated.
I think we have some questions over here, yeah? Yeah, we do. Good. Questions. Fire away.
Hi, I'm a professor of physics, particle astrophysics at the University of New Hampshire, and starting in January I'll have an affiliation with women's studies. And part of my responsibilities will be, I'm thinking about how to teach science, technology, society studies, and history of science, and gender studies, ethnic studies. So I'm really fascinated by the idea, first of all, bringing this course to the public, but I kind of wonder if you all have thought about how you might bring this into university classrooms, particularly at the general education level. But also, I think of particular concern is what role can Star Trek play in training scientists and how to think ethically about moving into the future, like what are some of the privacy issues, et cetera. Thank you.
That's a great question.
Well, I'm excited about the idea that you might be able to bring the course into your course. One of the things that we did, so there's 6 weeks, we've got 2 that are live now, so there's more content that's coming, and Living for Small World is really committed to making this an ongoing and engaged course content. So in each of the 6 weeks, there's about 5 different videos. For each video, there's a reading list, there's a watching list, so go watch our video and then think about going to watch some original series or Next Gen or Deep Space Nine. Maybe watch them with new eyes, with a lens from what we've shown you, I hope, in the video. And then we really went in a kind of deep dive from the things, including the Okuda's Star Trek Encyclopedia is listed as possible reading, to really think about the kind of the range of topics that get covered, but going into the existing literature, Robin Roberts' book on sexual generations, or Andre Carrington makes an appearance, who's a professor from Drexel, who has a great new book on
He's
race.
a friend of mine, so he's going to be thrilled when I tell him you mentioned him.
It's a great book. It's a really insightful book. So we try to point people to, Henry Jenkins' work, other scholars that you can read, books that are in the kind of Star Trek universe and that will take you into other places. So dig through our reading list.
Great question. Thank you so much. You got a question? Yeah? Okay. What's your name?
I'm Kieran. Nice to meet you.
What's your question?
So I'm not a professor. I'm not anywhere near that level. But I teach technology in Tokyo, Japan at the moment to elementary and middle school and some high school students. So while we mess around with like Lego robots and stuff like that, I'm just working on regular computers. What would be the most interesting part of technology from Star Trek that you think would excite kids of that age and get them involved?
That's a good question. Mike and Denise, I feel like this might be a you question.
I'll jump in to say there's a tech showcase associated with each of the weeks where we really dig into what are some of the technologies that have been inspired by Star Trek, and many of those were created by the folks who were behind the scenes and trying to think of what would this futuristic technology look like.
I'm sorry, I missed the focus of the question. Can you say that again, please? I
was wondering what one piece of Star Trek technology would excite and inspire children of elementary or middle school age, in your opinion?
I think the history of Star Trek has been closely mirrored by the history of real technology. So things that were so exciting back in the original series, an actual radio communications device that you can hold, tiny enough to hold in your hand, or a sensor, or even a translator. Those kinds of things, all of which are in Scott's hands, it certainly mirrors the challenge of writing for science fiction, because you want to stay ahead. As far as what inspires, I think the general concept of a spacecraft, not necessarily any specific spacecraft, but the spacecraft is a symbol of curiosity, of exploration, of what we humans can do when we really try, when we are ethical, when we work hard, and the symbol of the importance of knowledge, of curiosity. That inspired me most as a child, and I hope it will inspire children today.
Thank you.
I just want to say on that note, for me, I think the Voyager, not the Starship, the real Voyager, the one that's outside of the solar system. Feature, thank you. Yes. We built this thing. It is in interstellar space, a man-made object about the size of, from me to Denise, is in interstellar space, and it's still working at JPL. You can see it still has a heartbeat. It's crazy.
The project management for the Voyager spacecraft, which is still operating, is literally called the Voyager Interstellar Mission. There is an actual NASA project called an interstellar mission that's in space, in interstellar space today. How cool is that?
And by the way, this story of Voyager, is in Star Trek the motion picture. No. The story of Voyager, it's on Netflix right now. There's a documentary. It's called The Farthest.
Voyager the Farthest.
And it is brilliant, and isn't it great? I've seen it 3 times. If you have Netflix, it's called Voyager the Farthest. Watch it. And I have to say that, again, to be part of something so special and something so, like, it's the first of its kind, and it's Star Trek, and it's the Smithsonian, and it's just these lovely, fine, beautiful friends on this stage. It just warms my heart. I feel so very proud. So check out Star Trek Inspiring Culture and Technology. The course is live right now. There is a special offer. Check it out on the screen. And, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, Terry Farrell, Adam Nimoy, Margaret, Michael, Denise. Let's hear it. Sons of Kirk.